Everyone has the exact same story about Bitcoin, right? Everyone has some kind of story where, I saw Bitcoin 3 years ago. I should have bought it then. Someone told me about Bitcoin 5 years ago and I didn't listen to them, but, oh well, it looks like I missed the ship. And the biggest problem with that frame of mind is that you're going to be saying the same thing in a few years. And a lot of times this narrative is pushed by people who want to sell you a different crypto, right? They'll say, buy my crypto, right? It can, 100x, whereas Bitcoin can only 4x from here. So, my crypto that I'm trying to sell you that I created is going to return more than Bitcoin, right? It's too late for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's too old. It's old news. It's not going to go up much. We've missed the boat on Bitcoin. So now we have to make up our losses on crypto. And it's like a complete gambler's fallacy. And to understand why this is the case, we have to make a hard distinction between Bitcoin and crypto. So what's the difference between Bitcoin and crypto? Well, Bitcoin is money, right? Bitcoin is not a vehicle for you to enter and make more dollars as a result, right? The goal of Bitcoin isn't to buy low and sell high, right? With crypto, that is largely the case, right? It's a game of trying to buy low, sell high, wait for the pump, then sell, try to time your entry at the right time, right? It's a game of timing and, picking the best entry. But the problem with that is most of Bitcoin's gains are made on just a few days of the year, right? So if you're trading crypto, you're going to miss out on those few days of the year where most of the gains are made up, right? And like I said, Bitcoin is money. So when you're accumulating Bitcoin, you are saving, right? Bitcoin is a savings technology. You're saving in a type of money that has an absolute limit on how many will be created, right? And Bitcoin had a fair launch where anyone could participate in the network from day one. With crypto, most crypto is just fiat money reimagined, right? It's also money that someone created and is trying to sell you, right? Anyone could participate in the Bitcoin network from day one. There was no insider allocation. With crypto, right, it's a token that someone created and then they are trying to sell to you, right? So that's the biggest distinction there. And like I said, this gambler's fallacy, feeling like you missed the boat on Bitcoin, is just the wrong way to think about it, because even the logic doesn't make sense, right? People in crypto will tell you, well, Bitcoin's already a $1.5 trillion asset. If you buy my token, it's only a $20 million market cap. So there's a lot bigger potential for returns. But if you look at the top 100 coins today, compare that to the top 100 coins from, say 2014, right? It's going to look completely different, right? Most of these tokens don't even survive. So it's gambling, right? You have to pick the right coin. You have to pick the right entry point. You have to exit at the right time. And, it's a little bit more informed than just straight gambling, right? There's some kind of strategy, indicators, but at the end of the day, it's just another fiat currency game, right? It's another game where someone else has to lose for you to win, right? You have to sell to, a victim that's going to buy high and sell low, right? There has to be a loser in that situation. But with Bitcoin, right, by buying Bitcoin, you're saying, I don't want to store my hard work, right, my time and energy in a currency that's printed out of thin air, right? When I save for the future, I want that to be in something that no one can create more of, no one can replicate, right? No one can issue more of this into the market, right? A lot of these cryptos have a theoretical max, or they have no theoretical max supply, right? If you look at like the ticker on CoinMarketCap or whatever, it'll say infinity, right? Some of them have no cap on how many can exist. And obviously, there's no cap on how many different types of shit coins that people can make and sell to the public. And so on the point that Bitcoin is already too big, it's a $1.5 trillion asset. It's too big. We missed the opportunity. But so if you actually look at Bitcoin compared to other financial assets, it's so insanely early, right? I'm going to put it on the screen here. Bitcoin compared to other global assets, right? It's a $1.5 trillion asset in a global financial market of $1,000 trillion, right? Bitcoin is money, right? Bitcoin is competing in the broader financial market to be money, right? To be the way that people exchange and store value. So when you compare something like Bitcoin to these markets, right, half of this $1,000 trillion in assets is simply looking for a place to store their purchasing power for the future and maintain it. So Bitcoin is directly competing with those markets. And when you take into the account the fact that more and more people will understand Bitcoin, right, want to park their value in it, and things like Strategy using the financial markets to put more capital into Bitcoin, right? They're issuing equities that are competing in these equity and bond markets and then using the proceeds to buy Bitcoin. So the demand of Bitcoin is increasing. And on top of it, the overall supply of assets is increasing because the dollar is debasing. So the thing we're using to measure Bitcoin is also shrinking. So this $1,000 trillion in assets will eventually be 2,000 and then 3,000 trillion dollars of assets because the supply of dollars is endless, right? The Federal Reserve will continue to print more dollars out of thin air. So this is going to grow. So that's more and more market cap that Bitcoin can eat into. So just looking at Bitcoin at, if Bitcoin 3x's, then this is how many dollars I'll make. If Bitcoin goes up 50%, then I'll make this many dollars. It's just the completely wrong way to think about it, right? Bitcoin is a completely new paradigm of understanding money, how money works, and you need to be educated on this new language of money because there's nothing to compare it to, right? Nothing like this has existed in human history until Bitcoin was created. So again, Bitcoin is not a stock that you buy and sell. It's simply a method of saving, right? There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin ever, right? That number is not going to change because it's hard enforced by the network, right? So you're simply saying no to a financial system that robs your purchasing power by printing dollars at no cost and saying, yes, I would like to save for the future in something that can't be debased. So again, the only strategy, if you understand that, is to buy and hold Bitcoin for a long period of time. And even if you're new here, right, you haven't been watching the videos, you haven't been, watching hours and hours of Bitcoin podcasts like I have, then start small, right? Just try this strategy on for size, right? That's what I tell people all the time. You don't have to go all in on this, right? It's going to take time for you to fully understand this, understand the monetary system and Bitcoin's true use case and potential. So just start small, right? Put the strategy to the test. Put $10 a week into Bitcoin and don't touch it, right? That's like the biggest lesson from this, the biggest takeaway. And, the biggest objection to, I'm too late to Bitcoin. Just see what happens, right? Put $10 a week into Bitcoin and don't touch it. And odds are that money that you put in is going to purchase a lot more in the future. Because if you look at things priced in Bitcoin, right, the price of a home goes down in terms of Bitcoin, right? The price of a home, used to be 10 Bitcoin and 50 Bitcoin, 100 Bitcoin. Now it's like, 5 to 10 Bitcoin to buy a home, and that will continue to go down. So don't trade, right? Don't gamble on short-term price action and speculation. Simply save for the future in sound money, right? It's really that simple. And that's how simple it should be. But with this financial system where your dollar loses purchasing power as more enter the system, it has to be complicated because you have to be a part-time trader, a part-time speculator just to keep up with the money printer, right? The more dollars that are printed, the less potent each one of your dollars is, right? Just think of a glass of orange juice. You can dump a glass of water in there and then say you have more orange juice, but it's less potent, right? There's less orange juice per, whatever liter, milliliter, whatever unit of measurement. It's the same thing with dollars, right? You say, oh, I made a bunch of dollars, right? I bought Bitcoin at 50,000. I sold it at 100,000. Sure, you made more dollars, but those dollars were diluted. And don't make these mistakes. If someone's trying to tell you that it's too late to Bitcoin, we missed the ship, the odds are they're probably trying to sell you something else that they're claiming is better than just saving in Bitcoin. So that's about it for this video. Thanks for supporting the daily upload grind. And if you have any questions or suggestions for future video topics, just leave those in the comments down below. And I'll see you in the next one. As always, together, let's work, save, and build a better future with Bitcoin.